My name is Kessler and I'm 25 this year. I grew up in a family where, it wasn't all smooth like my childhood years. And I would say my childhood years are like one of the most important years growing up because it shaped who I became in my secondary school days and also in the future, the way I think and everything. My mom, basically, she was always busy at work and she was the one providing for my family. Whereas my dad, even though he was always at home, he was always silent, and me as a child growing up, I felt more emotionally neglected. I was caned, I was physically beaten sometimes when like my grades are not good or when I was mischievous. And so as a child, because you go through all these abuse, physical and verbal abuse, right? So as a child, I didn't understand what that meant, and so I started to lose trust in the authoritative figure in my household. I started to see every authoritative figure that was placed in my life after my father, I saw it as a threat to me. So in my coping mechanism, I started to be a very rebellious person. So growing up in primary school, secondary school, I was always very rebellious. I didn't want to listen to my teachers. My grades were bad and all that kind of stuff. So in poly, when I first joined, I remember joining the student union because there was the freshman orientation camp and whatnot. And I remember making a ton of friends then. Because I really wanted to fit in, I started hanging out with the wrong company. So I started picking out smoking. I started to smoke because I wanted to fit in with the cool kids, sort of. And I started to pick up drinking. I started to party a lot more because the culture then was just about partying, about getting girls, alcohol, and that kind of stuff. And when I was 17, I had a girlfriend in poly, and I thought she really loved me. But the thing is, she cheated on me twice, and that really broke my heart because I thought she really loved me. And it's like you took all that childhood trauma, all that trust issues, and the lack of love. And when I thought I finally loved someone and that person loved me, it felt like that person took all my trust and threw it out the window. So that really broke my heart and I started to spiral. Even though at that time I was like using alcohol, friends, partying and sex, to sort of like as a coping mechanism to fill that void in me, I felt like that void could not be filled because I was just so heartbroken by that pain. And so as a result, I just moved on to drugs. I did that for a while, and in about a year, I just kept going in this vicious cycle of just, filling myself with drugs, thinking all these things can make me happy. But in the end, I realized that it was all just temporary happiness. That landed me in a 6-year drug addiction, which, really caused me to fall into a very deep pit of depression, suicidal thoughts, and just a sense of like no purpose. In the first 4 years of my addiction, I really felt like I was living the life and I was absolutely satisfied. I loved taking drugs. I loved, getting high on alcohol. I loved sleeping around and all these things because it really gave me a sense of satisfaction. But I think for me, after the first 4 years, the shift came when I realized that, this is actually not doing me any good. And I started to realize the repercussions of whatever I was doing. It came to a point where I realized the pit that I was in, and something shifted in my heart where I said that I wanted freedom. So, but the thing is, I didn't know where to look for the freedom. So I would force myself to go cold turkey. But the thing is that I realized that every time I tried on my own strength, it would never work out because it was just my own strength. And within 3 days, I would just fall back into drugs. So I got my breakthrough when my cousin, all of a sudden, she texted me and said, "Hey, do you want to come back to church?" And I remember, thinking about it and asking myself, hey, maybe I should go back to church because the things that I've been trying, the cold turkey, the dopamine detox, everything wasn't working out. So I was like, you know what, maybe I should give church another shot. At the back of my mind, I knew that God existed, but it was just that I felt that 6 years of addiction and all that depression was I just felt super dirty and unworthy to just go back to church. But anyway, I just did, and I remember going to church for a period of 2 months, and during that 2 months, I was still struggling with what I was struggling with. I was going to church high. Actually, I was, sleeping in the services. Whatever the pastor preached, it would go in one ear and then it would come out the other. So I don't know what was going on, man, in that 2 months. But I believe God was working and He did work. And it came to a point where I remember during one particular service, they announced this healing service. So during the healing service, we had a response time where the pastor opened up the front for people that needed prayer to come forward. And so I knew that I didn't have any physical illnesses, but I knew that I needed help mentally. So I just decided to just step forward to the front and get prayer. So I remember when I was at the front, there was this pastor that came over to pray for me. And the first thing that came out of his mouth was, I used to be a drug addict for 20 years, and I felt the Lord ask me to come out and pray for you. And the moment I heard that, I was shocked, because it's like surely it's not a coincidence, right? Like, God would send another drug addict to come and pray for me. And He knew what I was struggling with. And I really just felt that love of God, that He knows what's going on in my life. And so I let Him pray for me, and the moment He laid hands on me, I felt the Holy Spirit power in a very tangible way. So I felt the presence of God. It was like a wave that came in and just filled my heart, filled whatever void that was in my heart. And it was like this wave of love that washed away and cleansed me. And I felt like God was saying to me, you are worthy, and you are clean. And I just felt that He was welcoming me back into His home as a son. When I had that revelation or realization, I realized that hey, everything that the world offers is just temporal. And after tasting God's goodness and His presence, I didn't want to trade that anymore for whatever the world could offer me. So from that day onwards, I started to chase sobriety, and I started to just chase only God. And I think that was when I really laid down everything, and that was when I stopped doing all my drugs. Looking back, God has truly been my redeemer, my rock when I hold on to during tough times, and also a father and a friend. And I think one of the things that really impacted me the most was the Father's love. And because I was just a broken little child and such a broken person, so many insecurities, this and that, but when I truly experienced the Father's love, it truly gave me an identity of who I am in God. And as I start to read His Word, and as I start to dive deeper into His presence and know Him more, I found that all my insecurities, all my anxieties, and the things that I used to struggle with all just faded away because I know who I am in Him. And I just want to encourage, those that are watching and maybe you're struggling with depression, suicidal thoughts, maybe drugs, the things that I used to struggle with. I just want to say that, the world can't offer you anything else better than what God has to offer you.